Neolithic times. Main idea. In the Neolithic age, people started farming, building communities, producing goods, and trading. After the last ice age ended, people began to change their way of life. They began to domesticate or tame animals and plants for human use. Animals provided meat, milk, and wool. They also carried goods and pulled carts. In addition, people also learned how to grow food. For the first time, people could stay in one place to grow grains and vegetables. Gradually, farming replaced hunting and gathering. This change in the way people lived marked the beginning of the Neolithic Age, or New Stone Age, which began about 8000 BC and lasted until about 4000 BC. Why was farming important? Historians call the changes in the Neolithic Age the Farming Revolution. The word revolution refers to changes that greatly affect many areas of life. Some historians consider the Farming Revolution the most important event in human history. Farming did not begin in one region and spread. People in different parts of the world discovered how to grow crops at about the same time. In Asia, people grew wheat, barley, rice, soybeans, and a grain called millet. In Mexico, farmers grew corn, squash, and potatoes. In Africa, they grew millet and a grain called sorghum. The growth of villages. People who farmed could settle in one place. Herders remained nomadic and drove their animals wherever they could find grazing land. Farmers, however, had to stay close to their fields to water the plants, keep hungry animals away, and harvest their crops. They began to live in villages where they built permanent homes. During the Neolithic Age, villages were started in Europe, India, Egypt, China, and Mexico. The earliest known communities have been found in the Middle East. One of the oldest is Jericho in the West Bank between what are now Israel and Jordan. This city dates back to about 8000 BC. Another well-known Neolithic community is Çatalhöyük in present-day Turkey. Little of it remains, but it was home to some 6,000 people between about 6700 BC and 5700 BC. They lived in simple mud brick houses that were packed tightly together and decorated inside with wall paintings. They used other buildings as places of worship. Along with farming, the people hunted, raised sheep and goats, and ate fish and bird eggs from nearby marshes. The benefits of a settled life. The shift to settled life brought Neolithic people greater security than they had ever known. Steady food supplies meant healthy, growing populations. With a bigger population, there were more workers to produce a bigger crop. Because villagers produced more than enough to eat, they began to trade their extra foodstuffs. They traded with people in their own communities and also with people who lived in other areas. People began to practice specialization, or the development of different kinds of jobs. Because not everyone was needed for farming, some people had the time to develop other types of skills. They made pottery from clay to store their grain and other foods. They used plant fibers to make mats and to weave cloth. These craftspeople, like farmers, also took part in trade. They exchanged the things they made for goods they did not have. In late Neolithic times, people continued to make advances. Toolmakers created better farming tools, such as the sickle for cutting grain. In some places, people began to work with metals. At first, they used copper. They heated rocks to melt the copper inside and then poured it into molds for tools and weapons. After 4000 BC, craftspeople in Western Asia mixed copper and tin to form bronze. Bronze was harder and longer lasting than copper. It became widely used between 3000 BC and 1200 BC, the period known as the Bronze Age. Reading check. How did the Paleolithic and Neolithic ages differ?